the small folk are gonna make the difference here in this battle. Unless you can get, until we can get those dragons going. This was a really good episode. I think overall it was pretty long too. It was an hour and 8 minutes, just the episode itself. When you look at the HBO app, it's like an hour and 15 because of all the behind the scenes stuff and the preview for next week and all that. So yeah, overall, pretty long episode. A lot happened for sure. I think as far as action goes, we don't get a lot of that, but there's definitely a lot of intrigue, a lot of planting a couple of seeds. I think the next two episodes that will close out the season will definitely be very strong, especially when it comes to moving the story forward. Once again, we get a little bit of moving pieces into place. Also, some really smart plays that I quite enjoyed. That was quite fun to kind of follow through. So, yeah, let's get into some of the spoilers and then we'll talk more about this episode. So, if you haven't seen it, make sure to go check it out and we'll come back. We begin with the small council. Aemon continues to make plans, he makes adjustments. Unlike his brother Aegon, he's not easy to manipulate by anyone in the council, really. We do get to see a little scene of the other Lannister brother prior to that, going into one of the lands, and this is kind of where what kicks off the conversation with with the small council as Aegon is summoned. Like, but he is now the regent. You don't just summon the regent, even if you want help from his dragon. So I think even though Aemon now has more power, that brings a little bit of a disadvantage to the Greens, because he is now kind of like similar to Rhaenyra, kind of grounded. He has to stay where he is, right? Well, he doesn't have to, but probably more. Um, it's probably like the king just doesn't go out and do stuff unless he really wants to, and that's kind of how Aemon, I think, it's feeling this. So we get to see Corlys as he joins as the hand of Rhaenyra. They also bring in a knight to attempt Sir Stefan to attempt to make him a dragon rider. So we're gonna have that happen this episode where Jace and Rhaenyra are putting their plan together to look for people of the lineage to make them dragon riders. So that should be pretty fun. We go back to Damon's haunted mansion. I just think of Luigi's haunted mansion every time that we go back to Harrenhal. He has that hallucination, and this one is actually pretty cool because we get to see Viserys again. Uh, it just it is so cool to see the actor back in the role. I think one of the things that's very smart about these visions is that we get to reprise a few of the roles, right? Or we get to see people come back a little bit to reprise some of the roles, even though maybe they haven't been around anymore because their character is really no longer around. We got to see Millie Alcove in the last episode, and we get to see we get to see Patty Considine in this one reprising the role of Viserys. So really interesting. It almost feels like Damon is imagining or hallucinating his greatest hits with a lot of these people, like the conversations, and maybe they go in a little bit of a more haunting fashion this time around. We do get to see also Damon is he's tired of it, right? He's tired of his mind being broken, and he's about to leave. He confronts Alice, but then he actually asks for her help, and she just tells him to be patient, and I think that's gonna bear fruit later on. So we'll see how that plays out. We have our dragon auditions. Number one is Sea Smoke is up, and it turns out that after a lot of high tension, really interesting that the dragon keepers have like these little sticks to like I don't know keep the dragons back, but I don't know what that's gonna do. It's really more about the attitude. So interestingly enough, like the dragon keepers, they don't really tame the dragons; they just kind of hope that the dragons will do as needed. But we do find out that Sir Stefan is not him. Um, we also see Corlys talking to Alan, and then Adam also chimes in. So I think we're gonna have. Obviously, they planted a lot of seeds of these two, who are illegitimate sons of Corlys, maybe becoming more legitimate. We do get to see a big thing happen for Adam later on as well. We also see the small folk just because of Miss Area's meddling. There's a lot of trouble stirring up in the bar, and the small folk are hearing this. They hear about the these lavish parties. They see that goats are being brought in for the dragon. So like obviously all this stuff is just affecting, and this motherfucker are really important in this episode. And I think, like I said, they'll be important as we move forward. Uh we see Rhaenyra talking to one of her councils, and she reminds him like, "I am the, I am the queen." She even slaps him, and then goes to talk to Mysaria, who is really her only ally other than Jace. I think they still have a great relationship, but even Jace has already his machinations, and he's trying to do stuff for his mom and trying to like feel like he's earning his place. So that's also very interesting. It's an interesting dynamic because obviously they support each other, but like Jace wants to be his own person. Um, we then get to see Aemon. He sends Laris to fetch Otto. I think Aemon wants to have his own hand, and I think he understands that whatever he may think of his grandfather, Otto Hightower was a great hand. um, he also goes in and gets a report that Aegon's getting a little better, so he goes for like the most. This visit was so tense because it reminded me a lot of in Succession when the brothers like he had the injury, and Ken was just kind of like hurting him a little bit. Like obviously they do all this stuff on the low. Like it's a very messed up relationship between Aemon and Aegon, because obviously Aemon's trying to figure out like what does Aegon remember, right? How much of that does he remember? Because otherwise he could be, brought in for treason. So, and he would lose all the power that he's been able to amass too. Um, we get to see Rhaena as she's kind of walking in the Vale. She finds evidence of a dragon, so this is a lot of definitely foreshadowing. Rhaena is the one that has not been able to tame a dragon, but of course they're planting a lot of seeds here as well. So we finally figure out what the plan is for Rhaenyra and Mysaria, as she sends what I call loot boxes to the small folk and King's Landing. So she sends like a lot of little ships with her banner, and the thing that's really important is that she's sending food and supplies to the small folk, um, because they're starving in the city, right? They're locked in, they're starving, and this is very well received. Like it all really it really makes sense that they would use this as the plan, right? You got to fight the war on all fronts, but sometimes the council doesn't see how important the little people are. But Mysaria, as somebody that came from the small folk, understands how important and how pivotal they can be to in this role. So we get to see Allison talking to her brother Gawain, and she asked about Darren, who's their other child that we've never met. I wonder if we're gonna get to meet Darren maybe in later seasons. I don't think they've cast anyone for the role of Darren, so we'll see how that plays out as well. Then Allison and Helena go to the keep to light some candles. But because of Rhaenyra's gifts and the fact that she has been standing up for the small folk, they actually a mob forms, and now Allison and Helena have to escape. It's pretty gnarly scene. Some of the King's Guard get taken down by the mob. Like some dude gets his hand cut off. Like just, and it's interesting to see the how these royals don't really have that much power amongst the people, right? So yeah, it was a hectic, very chaotic sequence. It did have a little musical sting that scene because they were outside of the big sept. It almost sounded to me like a little motif of the Light of the Seven. If you remember that scene where Cersei blew everybody up. Um, I'm not very good with musical motifs or I mean like recognizing songs and everything, but it really gave me a lot of vibes of that. Like it's just a small sting that you can kind of hear as they're zooming out. So I would think that it would be an interesting callback to that. Um, we also see Larys who visits Aegon, and he's trying to make himself indispensable, and I think that's really smart on his part. He explains to Aegon like, with your bad leg, you'll never be the same as you were, especially with now your bad leg and everything, all the injuries. I was never. He tells Larys explains that he also was never whole, and his family held that against him. So he's trying to evoke those similarities between them so that they'll maybe if Aegon comes back to power. he can kind of make, he can see Laris as an ally. So we see Damon once again imagining or dreaming about being with Viserys. I believe he was with his lost wife, and then he suddenly and very abruptly wakes up to get the news that Lord Grover is now dead. Now, obviously, if you've been keeping track, this is all Alice Rivers doing, who Damon did ask for help earlier on. So she's finally helping him out. Maybe Damon can finally make himself useful in this war. We see Sea Smoke, who was the dragon that was tested earlier, chasing Adam. Adam is one of Corliss's kids, and it looks like interestingly enough, he's the one. Sea Smoke is the one looking for a writer now, right? He feels lonely. He hasn't had a writer in a while. So we also have a conversation with Missera and Rhaenyra, who really has a lot of doubts about what she's doing, if she can even win the war, and she's looking for somebody that's just gonna like somebody that's really on her side, like truly, and I think Miss Area is this person, and they do end up making out. So, so I don't know where that's gonna go, but definitely very interesting development. And then lastly, we see that Rhaenyra is told that Sea Smoke has found the writer. They don't know who it is. So Rhaenyra takes Cyrex to investigate, and that's where the episode leaves off. So very cool stuff. Really, really loving this season. Really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I don't think it's as action packed, but just the actual events that are happening. I really like this whole. I think by the end of the season we're gonna have a full team of writers, of dragon writers, and I think the next season is when like everything's gonna go down. So it'll be interesting to see. I haven't read the book, so I don't know where things like I don't know how things. I don't know the order of things, and I don't remember. I know they talked about some of these things during Game of Thrones, but I don't really remember all the details. So I love experiencing all this stuff as if it was really, really new. So if you have watched this episode, let me know what did you think about House of the Dragons season 2, episode 6. And as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here on the channel. And thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.